Welcome to all of it. We got all of it.
All of it. All of it.
Our guest is Secretary Madeline Albright, Bryan Cranston, Tank and the Bangas, Barry Jenkins, Celia Keenan-Bolger, Aaron Lee Carr, Esperanza Spalding, Gideon Glick, Helen Yoyemi, Fab Five Freddy, Benga Akanabe, Brene Brown, Tony Goldwyn, Tandy Newton, Jake Gyllenhaal. Welcome to all of it. Thank you so much for joining us. Hello.
What a pleasure.
Hi. This is so fun.
I'll see you tomorrow.
We're here every day, 12 to 2. Impromptu concert.
I love it.
I love it. I love it.
I was there for the love of it.
You must tell the truth.
I'm sure everyone's perspective is unique.
There's a lot of truth about the pain of being an immigrant, but they're jokes. We find the funny.
It's our strength.
At what point do you think women's health care will stop being a political issue?
When half of Congress can get pregnant.
Ran out of words, but we do what we do. We don't have no board, so we got to trade twos.
So we trade twos. Ours is really dope groove. And Allison, was so nice to meet you.
Hi, everybody. Welcome to our May Get Lit with All of It book club event with Madeline Miller. To our regular book club members, hi, nice to see you. To everybody who's tuning in for the first time, maybe a couple of you found us via TikTok. Welcome to our book club. I'm Alison Stewart. A little bit about our book club. It's a part of our radio show on WNYC that I host, our arts and culture show. It's called All of It with Alison Stewart. That's handy because I'm Alison Stewart, and it is on WNYC weekdays 12 to 2. And we love books on this show. And every month we figure out what book we want to highlight and what author we wanted to talk to. And we decided to be on a really good theme for tonight's event. Tonight's event, the theme is work that has seen a second life via social media, specifically TikTok. That's how we arrived on Madeline Miller's 2012 book, which of course blew up huge on TikTok this year. So we'll talk to Madeline in just a little bit. We're also later going to hear two performances from the duo, Aly and AJ. Their 2007 song, Potential Breakup Song, went viral this year on TikTok. And they also have a new album out, which is really good. Really good. So they'll perform for us and we'll talk to them about their career. And then of course, stick around to the very end of the show because we have our June pick, which we will announce all the way at the very end. We have a great evening, a lot to get to, but first we want to get this book club party started with some music that seems appropriate for the evening. So we're going to do it like they did in ancient Greece and start with some lyre music. You see, we asked Madeline Miller, were there any musical artists that she thought might be great for this evening? And she suggested Bettina Joy de Guzman, who is a classicist and a multi-instrumentalist who sings ancient Greek poetry over original compositions with traditional instruments. It sounded so fascinating to us, and considering the theme of the evening, we were so grateful that Bettina Joy de Guzman agreed to be with us this evening. Bettina, thank you for being with us.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm so excited. Hello.
I can't wait. I cannot wait to hear your performance, but I want people to understand what you do. On your website, it says that you reconstruct ancient music. What does that look like? How do you do that?
Oh gosh. In order to do that, I have to have lots of books to look at. The books being epic and hymns in ancient Greek, and translations in case I don't have it all down, and the commentaries about it, and lots of historical reference and how did they play it, how did it sound like. And there are about 60 documents of ancient Greek music that were found that actually has the musical notations along with it, so that I can get little snippets and phrases and sort of integrate it into my music as well. That way it sounds authentic, but because it's new music that I'm doing, I'm not exactly copying everything. It has to sound like music to us too.
Well, of course, the title of the book is Song of Achilles. What do we know about what the music of ancient Greece actually sounded like?
Okay, so there's lots of different meters. So for instance, the Iliad was written in epic meter, and so it went dum da da dum da da dum da da dum da da dum 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 every time, and we know that. But we have to think about, so how did the bard come around and make it sound like? He's playing a lyre in a hall. So how does he project his voice? And what kind of emotions is he trying to emote? So it always comes down to what the heck are the words, and you have to go with that, and you have to know who your audience is also, and realize if you're trying to sing lullabies to someone, are you trying to bore someone, or are you trying to make them sleep, or are you trying to wake them up? So always and forever, there's the text, but then there's the connection with the audience as well. And that feeling, that musical connection has to stay true to the text.
How did you learn to play the lyre?
Well, I was a music student, and I played several different instruments as well as just doing traditional strings. So I've done everything from harp, like the big classical pedal harp, piano, ukulele, everything. And so transferring that over to a smaller instrument, whether it's a smaller harp or a lyre, didn't take much, but because it's a new instrument in many ways, it's a replica, right? And I have verified with the instrument makers who make the ancient replica lyres that I have the largest collection. I have something like 10 different ancient Greek replica lyres. And I had to sort of learn how to do it my way, my technique, using how they described it in the ancient ways historians do it. But also I was fortunate enough to actually have some people who started doing this maybe a couple of years ago. And Nikos Xantoulis, artistic consultant of National Greek Opera, is a very good friend of mine, and he's been playing the ancient Greek lyre for a few years now with the orchestras all around the world. And so we've worked together, and so I have a general idea, the technique, and how to make it work for me when I'm playing.
All right, so you have a song you're going to share. You're debuting it today.
Yes.
Can you tell us a little bit about it?
Yes, so this is specifically for this Song of Achilles and for this event. So it's completely brand new, and it's called Achilles, Briseis, and Patroclus because it's the lament. It's a particular scenes from the chapters 19 and 23 in the Iliad, where Patroclus has died. Sorry, everybody, but that's a climax of the book. You got to know that much. And how did I splice together lyrics and still make that ancient Greek meter happen? I had to know ancient Greek. I couldn't just copy and sing. And I had to get the snappiest lyric parts that still told the story. And I wanted the narrative to flow, and each character had to have their voice. And I started with Achilles saying Patroclus's name and ended with Patroclus saying Achilles' name. And somewhere in there, the relationship of Briseis wailing for Patroclus had to happen. And all that with the sadness and with the joy and the love that was there throughout the book of the Song of Achilles.
Without any further ado, here is Bettina Joy de Guzman with Briseis, Patroclus, and Achilles. Bettina, thank you so much for being with us.
Thank you so much. I'm excited to hear it now.
And that was Bettina Joy de Guzman. And I have to read a couple of the comments we've gotten from the performance. So sad and beautiful, all the emotion and sorrow is clear in her voice and the instrument. And then Spirits wrote something, sounds like something straight out of ancient Greece. So I think Bettina has set us up nicely for this evening's main event. Madeline Miller's novel, The Song of Achilles, was published in 2012. But the strangest thing happened. A group of TikTokers known as book talkers discovered the book, fell in love with the book, and blew the book up on TikTok this past year. Hashtag Song of Achilles has 35 million views on TikTok. It launched the book back onto the New York Times bestseller list, where it has been for the past 30 weeks. We were so happy to have Madeline Miller agree to be part of our Get Lit with All of It book club. And thanks to our partners at the New York Public Library, 4,822 of you took out e-copies of the book to read along. We hope all 4,822 of you are with us tonight because Madeline Miller joins us now. Madeline, thank you for being with us.
Hello, how are you? I'm so thrilled to be here. Thank you for having me.
So that was amazing to start with this music. Thank you so much for suggesting Bettina. And so we know in the book that Achilles is an amazing lyre player and the novel is Song of Achilles. So what was the role of music in this book for you, in writing this book, in creating the story?
Well, there were sort of two pieces to that. One part was that I loved the fact that these epics were originally sung. They were accompanied on a lyre, and they were these beautiful pieces of music. And the Iliad actually means the Song of Troy. Ili is the Troy part, and ad is where we get our English word ode. So song was sort of baked in, but I also love the idea that Achilles himself was this beautiful musician. and that there were all these other pieces. You know, we tend to remember him as this incredibly angry and violent person, but that he had these other sides to him, this piece of him that was a healer, that was this amazing doctor, and this piece of him that was also this musician, who could create beautiful art in the world. And part of what I wanted to do in building this character and in telling this story was to expand beyond just that epic violence, war sort of lens on his life, and look at the larger kind of lyric love story around him. So music felt like a really key part of that.
We'll dive into the story and the characters in a moment, but I have to ask you, where were you when you found out that this book, Song of Achilles, had blown up on TikTok? How did you find out?
Well, I started hearing that it was back on bestseller lists, and I would sort of hear from family and friends like, what's going on? And I was like, I really don't know. And then my publisher reached out to me and let me know what was going on. And I was just completely blown away. I was so excited and flabbergasted and taken by surprise, but in absolutely the most wonderful way.
What has it been like having this book connect with a whole new generation? Have they revealed anything to you about the story that seems new or you hadn't thought about before?
I mean, I love that people are making it their own. And, you know, that is sort of the essence of these stories, is that the Iliad and the Odyssey were stories that were told and retold and retold. They were oral tradition. They were passed down. They were shaped and reshaped. And so I love it if, you know, people then take my story and reshape it again. That is the ultimate compliment to me. And you know, I love that. And I love seeing people have sent me some of the videos, and it's always so exciting to see the passion that goes into it, the incredible engagement, the way people are so thoughtful, and just the love of books and stories and speaking back to those stories. Because that is what, I mean, I wish that sort of that kind of community around books had existed more when I was a young person, because I was reading all on my own, and I would have loved to have a passionate community to talk to.
So when the book was published, it was before gay marriage was legalized. And obviously the love story in the story is between two men. Have you noticed a difference in the reception of the love story now as opposed to 8 years ago, 9 years ago?
I mean, I am so thrilled to say that I have gotten very, very few negative responses to that. And that has been so meaningful to me, because the idea of making it a love story and centering it on this incredible bond and relationship and romantic attachment between Achilles and Patroclus was always the core of the novel for me. And in fact, I was really frustrated and kind of pushing back at the part of the tradition that had kind of hidden that interpretation. And so it makes me so happy to see that is resonating, because it was absolutely the core foundational, you know, impulse of the project from the beginning. I don't know if I've noticed a difference other than the fact that there are more readers now than there were then, a lot more, which is always really exciting. And I just, you know, but that has made me really happy, because I have to say that going into it, I wondered whether or not I was going to get a lot of pushback on that. And I really haven't. And I'm so glad.
Let's get into some of your work and your writing and your craft. What made you decide to tell this from the point of view of Patroclus?
So there are sort of two answers. One is kind of like the artistic answer, which is that there was never going to be anyone else. It was Patroclus or bust. You know, he was absolutely the character that really drew me in. And then sort of the more complicated answer is that I was really interested in how he sort of could shed light on Achilles in a very different way. He was such a side character. He was so intriguing. There was so much mystery around him in the Iliad, but he really doesn't get sort of, you know, his own, other than his great big moment. And I'm just going to apologize because there are going to be spoilers all over the place for the Iliad. So I'm sorry. But when he dies in the Iliad, sorry, everyone. You know, that's a really big epic moment, but we're not really getting his internal life and what Achilles tells us in the Iliad is that nothing is more important to him than his reputation. And then that moment comes when Patroclus is killed, and all the sort of pride and posturing about his reputation is completely out the window for Achilles. That the only thing that matters to him is his intense grief over losing Patroclus. And so I wanted to know, who is this man? And I wanted to know kind of from the inside out. You know, he is the linchpin that the whole Iliad turns on. He is the key character of the whole thing, and we know almost nothing about him. And I was also really drawn to him because of his empathy and his kindness, which are pretty unusual qualities for an ancient Greek hero. But we hear a couple sort of intriguing things about him in the Iliad, which is that he, Briseis, who's one of my favorite characters to write in the novel, but also in the Iliad, says that he was always gentle. And we also hear that he was kind to everyone in the Iliad. And so with those sort of little hints, the fact that he's been forgotten and pushed to the side and never really explored, and also this sort of gentle aspect of him, really, really made me want to understand the character more. So it was sort of my curiosity and being drawn to the mysteries around him.
Why is your Achilles drawn to Patroclus?
That is a great question. And I am one of those really super annoying writers who thinks that once the book is out in the world, it belongs to my readers just as much as it belongs to me. So if anyone has any theories about that, you're right, and it's valid. But for me, I think, because one of the things that was really fun is sort of being in Patroclus's mind and living in his mind. And he sort of answers that question for himself, but he doesn't always know. To him, it feels miraculous to him. Even though I think for those of us who can look at his behavior, actually, he's an incredibly admirable person. He's often very down on himself in the course of the narrative, but that he is very heroic in a non-traditional way of being heroic. And so I think it's sort of his the fact that he is a little bit out of step with everything else. And I think Achilles appreciates that.
You made me laugh when you said a spoiler about the Iliad. Because I have a feeling anyone who picks up this book, or anybody who is an English major at college, that you kind of know the stories already. So I'm curious, as a writer, how do you create tension around stories that everyone knows already?
So this is where I'm just so grateful to have been a director of plays, because I feel like everything I learned about this, I learned from directing plays, in particular Shakespeare plays, where, you know, when you're directing Hamlet, like a lot of the audience knows going into it that there's going to be a pile of bodies on the floor by the end. And what matters as the director is that you draw that arc in such a way that when you get to that moment right before those characters die, the audience is thinking, no, you know, don't let that happen, even though you know it is going to happen. And so rather than sort of focusing on the surprise of the ending, it's really about the journey of the characters and making sure that those journeys feel right and psychologically three-dimensional and really fleshed out and really satisfying, so that when that end comes, it feels both completely, you know, shocking, but also right for that moment. So I feel like I just practiced it in directing plays. And then I sort of could bring that into my fiction.
What did the research process for Song of Achilles look like?
So in some sense, I was researching it from, you know, the time I was in high school and started reading the Iliad in Greek for the first time. But there was also a lot of reading about different versions of their story kind of through the centuries. I kind of did like I cast this huge wide net and read every ancient version of their story that I could find, and some not so ancient. I, you know, even was looking at Shakespeare's Troilus and Cressida, and a little bit of that kind of made its way into the novel as well, particularly in the character of a little bit of Patroclus, and his unwarlike nature in Song of Achilles is a little bit inspired by the portrait of him in Troilus and Cressida. But I also do a lot of research as I go. So it's really important for me that the material culture of the world be very vivid. So the cups and the armor and the bracelets, all that kind of stuff. So a lot of the stuff that appears in the novel is based on real archaeological finds that we have. I do a lot of flora and fauna research. And then the most fun part of the research, of course, is actually going to the places. So I'm very fortunate that I got to go to Greece, go to Turkey and visit Troy and see all these things, because there is really no substitution for, what does the light look like on the water? What does the dust in the olive grove feel like? What is the quality of the air? All those types of things are vital for a writer. Even if I'm not mentioning it, I need to know it so that I can kind of fill that scene out and make you feel like you're in it, hopefully.
What was something that changed as a result of those trips?
That is such a good question. I think one of the things is just realizing how close Troy is to the sea. Like being there and realizing it's just sort of feeling the geography of how that all worked was really, it just like sort of straightened up my brain on describing where everything was. So that, I think that.
I always say about our show, there's sort of a low hum of feminism underneath. And I wanted to ask you about the characters, the female characters. You said Briseis was one of your favorite to write. The women have a hard way to go in these myths and in the book. How did you reconcile that? How did you want to write about them? Did you have to put, I don't want to assume you're a feminist, but I'm guessing.
Oh, definitely. You can definitely assume. It's a loud hum.
Okay. It's a yodel. Is that?
Yeah.
How did you deal with that in writing these characters when we know so many of them are treated poorly and are not in positions of power, aside from Achilles' mother? We'll get to her in a minute.
Oh, good. Well, I think one of the things that I was a little bit of a challenge is because this is a first person narration, all of sort of the characterizations of the women have to be filtered through Patroclus and his consciousness and his awareness. And he is extremely aware for an ancient Greek hero, but he is certainly not, as aware as you might like him to be. And I wanted some of that to shift over the course of the novel also, that he comes to realize that he has had some really big blind spots. He has had some really big, misunderstandings about just how much women are suffering in this world. And I think part of his relationship with Achilles' mother is about coming to terms with that, but also coming to see Briseis. He's really drawn to Briseis, but he also doesn't quite fully get her in the beginning. He still kind of sees her as this other. He sort of so he has to do battle with that. So part of what I was doing is sort of reaching through his perspective to try to allow the audience to see things that he's missing at moments. And so, his sort of casual references to just how common sexual assault was, just how common slavery was, just how common all of this sort of brutal treating women as objects, not allowing them to have any agency, from, these very, very huge moments of pain to just very, very small moments of women living incredibly constricted lives. So I wanted to filter that in as much as I possibly could, while also being realistic that, he could see a lot, but he can't see everything. But I certainly wanted, one of the things that I think is so important is making sure that these characters are fully three-dimensional characters. And so characters like Briseis, characters like Deidamia, I spent a lot of time thinking about these women and their lives. Deidamia is actually one of my favorite characters because she is just so young and I feel so bad for her. I think she has a really, really, she has some really bad luck and she makes some bad self-destructive calls. And I think a lot of us have been there when we're teenagers. And, what happens to her that kind of Achilles sails off into his glorious future and she gets left behind in this really crushing way. And so I wanted that to still have presence in the novel, even if Patroclus doesn't fully see it in the moment.
And viewers, listeners, we want to let you know that you're going to be able to put some questions into the chat, or if you want to go to our Instagram at all of it WNYC, and I'm going to be getting to viewers' questions in just a little bit. But Madeline, you're still mine for a bit. All right, let's talk about Mom. When you were on our show to give us a preview, when you're on all of it for a preview, we asked you what was something you wanted our readers to pay attention to, and you said pay attention to Thetis. You wanted them to pay particular attention to her in this book. Why? What is it about her that you really want readers to understand or think about?
Well, I think her story is incredibly tragic, I find. But it oftentimes, I think Achilles and Patroclus are wrapped up in each other for so much of the novel. And it's only later that I think Patroclus comes to realize just how tragic her story is as a parent. And he doesn't have a close connection to either of his parents. And so she feels like an interloper to him, and figuring out sort of the family dynamics there. I also think that, as I said, she represents so many of the things that happen to him. And here she is, she's a nymph, which means that her life should be pretty good, but actually it's terrible. She is given away to someone she doesn't love, who sexually assaults her. She's forced to bear a child with this person. She then learns that she's going to lose her child incredibly young. I mean, it's just sort of like tragedy after tragedy after tragedy. And she doesn't handle it well, but she's also a goddess, and they don't have a lot of emotional intelligence in the mythology. So, nowadays we would say, like, Thetis, you need some therapy, you need some grief counseling, like we could help her with that. But in the mythology, she cannot. And so part of what I think she was this, it was also really fun to write kind of the otherworldliness of her power, how alien she can feel. And so I loved digging into kind of that power and how frightening and sort of eerie it feels to be around her, at the same time as looking at, you think she's so powerful, but actually she is almost completely powerless in her life.
In between our live events, when we announce the book and we have these events, we do all kinds of Instagram polls. We kind of hold a book club online during the course of the month, and we put up a couple of polls, and I want to get your reaction to them. We asked our listeners whether they understood Achilles' desire to go to war and meet certain death rather than live a long life in obscurity. 75% said yes, and 25% said no. I'm curious what you think of that.
I mean, I think that makes sense. And the choice is really the choice between sort of epic and what I would describe as lyric. It's the choice between living this huge, larger than life existence, or, ancient lyric poetry was much smaller and quieter. And it's about dinner parties with your friends and hanging out and, beautiful things that you see in the little boat that you like. And it's these much sort of smaller things. And I mean, I think that desire for fame and for glory is still very much with us, just as it was for the ancient Greeks. But I will add that in the Odyssey, we actually get to check back in with Achilles and see. Now, this is Odysseus's epic, so who knows? Maybe Odysseus has his thumb on the scale. But when Odysseus sees Achilles and Patroclus, their spirits, after they're dead, he says to them, here you are, Achilles, you're king of the dead. You're the most famous warrior. You have everything you ever wanted. It must feel pretty good. And Achilles says, no, I made the wrong choice. And it's this like shocking moment where, particularly if you love the Iliad and you're sort of steeped in Achilles' story, in that one moment in the Odyssey, it's like the whole Iliad is sort of broken and wrenched off what you thought it was into something else. So that moment in the Odyssey where Achilles says it's better to be alive than to be dead, and king of the dead, I really was in my mind the whole time I was writing Song of Achilles.
Let's get to some listener questions. All right. Yao on Instagram. Did you consider writing a chapter or two in Achilles' voice? Can you write it as a sequel?
Thank you. I did. So actually, I wrestled with the ending a little bit because, okay, we've already had the spoiler about Patroclus dying, so he dies in the novel. But there was this question that I had about sort of how, now what? And I thought about, do I switch narrators? Do I switch to Achilles? I actually thought about switching to Achilles as a possible narrator. And I also thought about switching to Briseis as a possible narrator. But in the end, it just felt right to stay with Patroclus in that moment. So it's, the idea is in there in the back of my mind, for sure.
Kiwi would like to know, what books would you recommend for a new Greek mythology reader?
Oh gosh, there are so many. So first of all, I love Emily Wilson, the new translator of the Odyssey. I think she is brilliant. So if you want to sort of read a really exciting, suspenseful, smart, accessible version of the Odyssey, Emily Wilson's is excellent. I also really love Anne Carson. She's one of my favorite sort of classicist poets out there. Her novel, The Autobiography of Red, is incredible. And she also has some wonderful translations of Sappho, the lyric poet, one of the very few women that we have from the ancient world. I would also say, there's so many wonderful versions of these stories out there. Natalie Haynes does some really, really wonderful stuff as well. So see what you like. There's a lot of great stuff. And I love how people are, I feel like there's this huge moment where people are really reclaiming these texts and sort of speaking back to them and bringing in characters that were on the side. I love Tayari Jones's An American Marriage, which is inspired by the Odyssey. I read it, completely missing that, not realizing it until I heard her talk about it. But that's a really fascinating sort of modern version of the Odyssey.
I think it's funny. Some of the comments we're getting, it's like a little bit like a greatest hits, like play Freebird. Somebody just said, Reagan said, I'd love to see Madeline's take on Hades and Persephone. So just in case.
Oh, thank you. Thank you.
All right. But Ellie would like to know, is there another myth you would like to write about?
There are lots of other myths that speak to me. Pandora is a story that I've always really been drawn to. She's kind of the Eve of ancient Greece. It's like, oh, if only she weren't so curious, everything would be fine. The story of the Aeneid and some of the women in the Aeneid is really interesting. The Aeneid is Virgil's, the great Roman version of the Iliad and the Odyssey, or sort of an attempt to write back to the Iliad and the Odyssey. But there are some really, really interesting women in it and sort of side characters that I would love to focus on there. Hades, Persephone in particular is such an interesting character because that whole story is such a kaleidoscope. I feel like every little millimeter that you turn it, you get something different every time. So it's something I've thought a lot about, and I don't have plans to write about it imminently, but it is, I love how faceted that story is and how incredibly deep. And really that's true of all these stories, that there's so many different entrance points, so many different ways to look at them.
Mary would like to know, why does Patroclus become so violent when he takes on Achilles' persona?
That's a good question. I think it has to do, well, so first of all, once again, I'm going to say that whatever you think is correct. But, in that moment, I think adrenaline can do a lot. And I think he's frustrated, and I think he's filled with this hope that I can just fix everything. If I can just do this, I can fix everything. And I think that feeling of kind of hoping that if you just do this one really big thing, all the problems will go away it's like a high. And I think it kind of takes over him in a sense. And what he does, in fact, does not fix everything. Well, it does for if you're Agamemnon or Odysseus, because it leads to them getting what they want, but it doesn't fix anything for him and Achilles. So those moments where we sort of throw ourselves into something and maybe it's not the best thing, but it feels so good in that moment to finally be doing something.
To your point that it's adrenaline for Patroclus, it is nature, it seems, for Achilles to be this warrior, to be this violent. And we did ask about that in one of our Instagram polls. We asked readers whether they thought less of Achilles because of how much he enjoyed the battle. 69% said no, 31% said yes. We see a really multifaceted Achilles. Is he a dual personality?
In a sense, he is. I mean, I think that is part of not clinically, but in the sense that he has this divine part of him. And, I see the gods largely as being incredibly cruel and violent and vengeful and selfish and self-absorbed. And I think that what's interesting, so he has this piece of him that belongs to the world of the gods. And a lot of the novel, I think, is Patroclus kind of trying to drag him towards humanity, which is still incredibly flawed, but at least has the ability to feel empathy, whereas most gods don't have that ability. When you get to the lesser goddesses like Thetis, you get a little bit of that, or like, for example, Circe, you get some of that. But the larger gods are these sociopathic narcissists. And so what I think is interesting is that when Achilles is at his most cruel, he's said to be acting most like a god. And so there's this fight, I think, always between his humanity, which, humanity is not perfect, and also his divinity. And so I think those things are always at play in him. And part of what I also like about Achilles is that there's this other side of him. So, which is, so that part is very disturbing that he has this piece of him that can be so utterly cruel, and that can lose himself, particularly when he loses his connection to Patroclus, and Patroclus as sort of this anchor on him in a good way. But also the fact that he has these other pieces of him, the ability to sing, and he could have lived another type of life if he chose to.
Let's get a few more listener questions in here. Linda Freeman would like to know why we didn't hear from Helen of Troy.
So that was very deliberate on my part. I didn't show her, and I didn't have her speak at all. And that's because I feel that Helen has been so, in a sense, I feel like she has been so used by so many versions of the story as sort of the focus being on her, and Helen makes this choice and she causes all these deaths, and the face that launched 1,000 ships, giving her all this agency in that moment. And I kind of wanted to focus on the fact that yes, she does maybe make a choice depending on the myth you follow. I mean, there's so many myths about Helen, there's so many versions of her story, but that ultimately she is being used as an excuse for war, and she's being used as an excuse for sort of the kings competing with each other, and that in a way she sort of is, secondary to all this, even though romantically the myths put her at the center. They're not really treating her as a full person in those moments.
And many of the TikTok videos show people crying when they're reading the book. And someone asked, did you get emotional writing the end of the book?
I totally did. First of all, it was really emotional saying goodbye to these characters. I had lived with them in my head for more than 10 years. I mean, specifically, I had been writing the book for 10 years, but I had been thinking about them even before that. And so to have gone on this journey with them, and then to sort of write the last scene and say, that's the last scene I'll ever write, was emotional, but also sort of going through that journey and the role Thetis plays, and saying goodbye, and then giving them the happiest possible ending that I could, given that it was a tragic ending. All of that was that. Yes, I was very emotional.
Madeline, we've come to the end of this part of the program. We're so happy you were able to be with us. I felt like you were with us all month long. And we discovered something before the show that, we have our musical guests coming up, and they have meaning in your life. Will you share with the audience before I bring Aly and AJ on?
Absolutely. Well, AJ is the amazing voice of Catra on the She-Ra reboot, created by Noel Stevenson, and we are huge She-Ra reboot fans in this family. And oftentimes people will ask me, tell me about sort of what are some great modern epics. My answer is She-Ra. The She-Ra reboot is this incredible story of heroism, of trying to sort of find your place in this, hostile world and figure out what's the right thing to do. I think in She-Ra they succeed a lot better at being good people than oftentimes they do in Greek mythology. But also, these amazing stories of redemption. So it's such an honor to get to have a little share this with AJ and Aly, and also with Bettina.
Madeline Miller, thank you so much for being with us, and thank you for writing Song of Achilles.
Thank you so much for having me. This was such a pleasure. Thanks everyone for your great questions.
All right, like Madeline, our final guest this evening had their work find a new life again on social media, on TikTok specifically. Aly and AJ's Potential Breakup song came out in 2007. And then flash forward to 2020, and it went viral with all kinds of videos, including ones that, like Mom's Weekend Gone Wild. You need to go look that up. So by the end of the year, there were already 2 million TikTok videos like that one. All right, a decade later, including a partial break, you heard what AJ had been up to. This month, Aly and AJ are releasing a new album. I have to read the whole title because it's long. A touch of the beat gets you up on your feet, gets you out and then into the sun. It's released on their own independent record label, and it's the first full-length EP since the one that produced Potential Breakup Song back in 2007. Here now with a performance of the track Slow Dancing is Aly and AJ.
It's been days and weeks and months. Feels like forever since I saw you. I'm forgetting how you felt now. I've never had this much time on my hands. Move the kitchen table out to the lawn. Roll up the rug, the stereo's on. All I can imagine is being in your arms. I want you to know I don't need anything fancy. I just need me and you slow dancing. Hell's bending, keeping me captive. Heaven's here, it's right where you're standing. So dancing. Tangled in red, white, and blue. The battle outside is blazing, and all I'm thinking about is you. Move the kitchen table out to the lawn. Roll up the rug, the stereo's on. All I can imagine is being in your arms. You to know I don't need anything fancy. I just need me and you slow dancing. Hills bending, keeping me captive. Heaven's here, it's right where you're standing. Slow dancing, dancing. thinking about is you.
And Aly and AJ join us now. I have to give you guys a little bit of love, or shall I say, our viewers are giving you a little bit of love. Madison says, slow dancing is such an amazing song. And Rosie wrote, wow, the song fits perfectly for the Song of Achilles. I'm emotional right now. So there you go.
Oh, I love that.
Thanks.
That's so cool.
So, I know you've answered this question a lot, but I'm really curious. How did you learn, Aly, that you guys had blown up on TikTok again? You were living your lives. You were thinking about new music. You had moved on.
Yeah, at that point, we were heavily at the end of recording a full record. So we were kind of in mix mode at that point. We were finishing up the songs and choosing our first single. And I started getting these messages from girlfriends that were sharing the song. And I didn't really understand what was going on because I wasn't a TikTok user at this point. And I just thought it was like a random thing. And then more came. And then it was millions of views. And then I started to understand. And then, AJ and I were like, wow, this is really taking off.
AJ, did it make you think about the song differently?
It did, in the sense that we were able to bring something new to it. When we re-recorded it, it didn't change the meaning of the song for me, but it gave it a new life. And I think Aly and I were able to give kind of a freshness to the song that we hadn't given to it in 14 years. Mm-hmm. So I think being able to re-record the vocals and remix it and remaster it and get some new instrumentation on it was actually really refreshing and gave it kind of a new light for Aly and I.
So you folks had gone and done different things. We heard about Shira. You were performing as 78 Violet for a while. What made you come back to being Aly and AJ? Aly, I'll let you go first.
I don't think we ever necessarily left as Aly and AJ. I think we've always kind of been here. It's just that our passions were redirected to our careers as actors. And I think we got a little burnt out. I think we lost some inspiration and guidance. And I think we just needed that time as young artists to really find ourselves, to find our voice, to find our sound. And I think that we finally now come to that kind of monumental moment for us as a duo. And being able to make this record just solidified that even more, that, we are supposed to be making music and that this album is the best music that we've personally put out to date.
AJ, what was something that you discovered about yourself, about your talent, about what you want to do with your talent during that time?
I think that Aly and I found our strength as songwriters during that time. We had 2 records that we actually had worked on, but just hadn't put out. And a lot of people don't know that during that time, yes, we weren't putting out music, but we were still writing and we were still working on our voices and, our instrumentation and the kind of songs we wanted to write. And for Aly and I, it was a bit of a dry spell for a second. And then we really found our sound. And there are a lot of songs that will never come out that will kind of hold dear to our hearts that I'm proud of, but I don't think they need to be out there necessarily. And Aly and I can always hold on to those. And I think those songs led us to this album. So I think our strength as songwriters is what really kind of escalated during that time.
Aly, how would you describe the sound that you found?
I think we found this sound that resonates with the place that we grew up in. We're California kids. We grew up in the Valley. We love nature. We love being outside, being at the beach, being outdoors. And we just wanted to capture that thing about California that so many people go searching for when they visit, or even if they just live there as a local. And so we kind of went back to some of these really iconic albums that we grew up listening to and records that we really respected. And we decided with our producer, Eve Rothman, to sit down and form a plan that felt like something we could achieve, but also something that was a bit of a challenge at the same time. And that was making sure that we could record this record in a live studio with live musicians at one point in time and not overdubbing the album, which is more common than not these days. And it was an incredible experience. we were able to record this whole album at Sunset Sound, which is an amazing recording studio that has a long history of unbelievable artists that have made really special records behind those walls. And I think that we did something really special with this music. And I think that, like AJ said, it only grew our potential as songwriters.
I think it's windows down music.
Yeah. Driving your car.
Windows down.
Well, literally, the lyric in Pretty Places is with the windows down, I can feel it in the air tonight. And I think that's kind of a perfect representation of this album is windows down, we're getting out into the sun. There's a light at the end of the tunnel for a lot of people past this pandemic. And we are seeing that. You know, there are gatherings and groups coming together and herd, immunization. And it's amazing. I mean, it's really something that Aly and I can look at and go, all right, we're ready to take this record on the road.
All right, you ladies opened yourself up to a Reddit earlier this month, and there's this very funny exchange because someone asked you, how did you two meet and then decide to pursue music? And you replied, at home, we're sisters.
That was AJ, actually. That was an AJ response.
Well done.
She's the typer in the Reddit session.
When we do like Q&As online and we're just typing with fans, I don't even think about it. I literally just type exactly how I would answer like a friend. And that's what came out. So it went viral and we ended up making a t-shirt about it. So now there's a t-shirt that has
now you can
babies.
buy a t-shirt that has our faces on it as young, very young kids.
Literally,
we met at home.
It's literally the day I came home and Aly's holding me.
Aw, that's some cute merch. That's
pretty good.
It's pretty cute.
But so that's really sweet. That brings me to my next question. Because when AJ signed on, she's like, I really miss Aly. She's not here. Aly, you're in Italy, right?
I am. Yeah. I'm in Rome right now. Yeah. I leave tomorrow, but I've been here for the last week. Yeah.
And she was just saying how much she really missed you. I'm not telling tales out of school, but she really did miss you. How do you think your sisterhood has enhanced your musicianship? Aly, you want to take that?
Yeah, I think it's enhanced it because you can see it on stage and you can see that we get along and that we're sharing the spotlight and that it's not all about me, it's about us, the two of us, and it's about our backing band. And I think that the fans really understand that bond. I think whether that's a bond that they maybe share in their life with a sibling or a best friend or a mentor, I know that, it's part of our human connection to bond with someone in our life in that special way where you can kind of finish their sentence and you have this stream of consciousness just between the two of you. And I think that we've always shared that just as young girls. And I think it's only gotten stronger over the years. We live down the street from each other. We see each other every day, if not every other day. And I think that it just makes our live show really special because it's blood harmonies that are being sung up there on stage. And we've gone through this journey together from the very beginning of when we were young kids and we got signed to now as young adults.
I'm curious, on our show, we have a real range of ages. So I'm a Gen Xer and the two producers who work on Get Lit are Gen Z folk, and they were losing their minds when we booked you.
Oh.
They both pushed for it. I'm going to embarrass Jordan and Simon. They're like, this would be the best thing ever. They've been tweeting about it. They remember you from Disney, the whole thing. How much have you seen that fan base come around again? And I'm curious what it's like now that they are young adults.
It's wild. I mean, we have people who are on our team who have listened to our music when they were kids and grew up with our music and are now working with us. And it's exciting for Aly and I, because we're Gen Xers as well, but I have such a respect for Gen Z because look what they've done on TikTok. They've reignited songs like Potential Breakup Song that are 14 years old. And hopefully we get a chance to play a song like Pretty Places that then in 14 years from now, the next generation is going, do you remember Pretty Places? I want them to re-record that and put it out again. Yeah. And it's just neat. It's really neat to have that connection to our fans. I think they've truly grown up with us. And Aly and I have been able to see that in real time. And I think there's a trust there because I think ever since we were young, Aly and I have been putting out music that we really truly believed in. It was heart and soul songwriting from us. And we've never really stopped doing that. So even though there was this long gap, I think as soon as we came out with, the 10 years EP, people felt like, oh, those are those girls again. I can trust them. I know who they are. I recognize them. And it's really neat. It's really cool to see that again years later.
Aly, this record is out on your own independent label. Am I right?
Yeah, it's distributed through AWOL, who we've been with since we put out 10 Years in Sanctuary, our previous EPs. And they've been wonderful to work with. And it's just been a great way for us to really stay in the driver's seat with the music and being able to deliver that to the fans in the way that we want it to sound and to look like. So we're really grateful to them. So yeah, you guys can get it on vinyl, stream it, download it, Spotify, Apple Music, all the things.
All the things. I don't, you know this, I'm sure, and I don't know if our listeners know, Vogue has called your new album a candidate for Album of the Summer.
Pretty cool.
That's very cool.
It is kind of cool. I mean, I know you don't make music so that you get accolades like that or any kind of little statuettes, although that stuff is all really nice. But AJ, how does it make you feel that, people are thinking, yeah, might be my summer soundtrack, especially this summer?
Yeah.
This summer of all summers to be considered like the album of the summer it's amazing. I think this album has been a relief for a lot of people and a release. And it's neat that Vogue recognized it as something that feels really good to listen to. It is kind of an ode to the open road. It's all about getting out into the sun and traveling and seeing your friends and going on a road trip. And that could be alone or with someone you love. It doesn't matter. It's just about going from one destination to the next. And I think we all need that. Everyone's itching for that, especially with, this past year. And I think Aly and I set out to make a record that felt, authentically true to us. And clearly it's being received that way. And that to me is something that, is a goal that we can check off the list that, wow, exactly what we put out, people understood what we were doing.
You guys are going to be at Lollapalooza this summer. Aly, what other tour plans?
We just put out our list of venues that will be playing all over the world, which is pretty big for us. We haven't done a proper world tour. So we'll be in the UK and the EU and then we'll do a big US tour. Next year, 2020, we start the tour off end of February. And yeah, we're just thrilled to be able to get out and play live music. I mean, we've even been starved for live music ourselves as musicians. So it'll just be great to be able to connect with the fans and to play cities that we've never played before. There's a lot of places that we've added to our routing that are first time spots. And that'll be really great to be able to connect with those fans that haven't seen us in their city yet.
Okay, AJ, can you set up the second song for us, Paradise?
Yeah, Paradise is one of my favorites off the record. It's actually one of my favorite songs to play live. I just think there's an energy to this song that is it's so important and so beautiful. And it stems from this idea, Aly, you can explain it because you're better at this, but the Henry Miller book that you kind of pulled this idea from, which I love. Just let Aly set this up.
Yeah,
it's very cool.
There's a Henry Miller passage in one of his books. And, he mentions kind of this want for all of us to experience paradise. And then when we do get there, we're not really able to even comprehend that we can stay there. We don't have to leave. And he's kind of talking about Big Sur and just the area that so many people travel to and we're so kind of enchanted by. And then they kind of would think, well, I can't pick up and move my life here. Like this just has to be a place that I visit and then leave. And he's like, we really never know when our paradise is happening because it's so hard for us to just realize it and stay there and to choose it. So I just thought that was a really wonderful thought and a great subject to write a song about. And so that's really what inspired the meaning of the song and the title of the song.
Yeah.
Aly and AJ, thank you so much for being part of Get Lit this month. It was a pleasure to have both of you.
Oh, thank you. It was great listening to everyone speak. It was really lovely.
It was. We really enjoyed this.
And you made Madeline's kids' day.
That's great too.
That's so sweet.
We love those moments. Mom brownie points are great.
Totally.
Here's Paradise from Aly and AJ.
Thank you.
and walk through the water to find a place unlike our own. Paradise, paradise. Paradise, paradise. Paradise, paradise. But we know that it's paradise. We made it to our paradise, paradise. But we know that it's paradise. We made it to our paradise, paradise. But we know that it's paradise. We made it to our paradise, paradise. But we know that it's paradise. We made it to our paradise, paradise. But we know that it's paradise.
Thanks to Aly and AJ for those two performances. Also, thanks to Bettina Joy de Guzman for that wonderful lyre performance. And of course, to our author, Madeline Miller, Song of Achilles. If you enjoy that book, read Circe, her other one. It's really good too. Okay, it's almost time to announce our June Get Lit with All of It pick. First, we have some thank yous. We have to say thank you to our partners, the New York Public Library, who get those e-books to New Yorkers, Brian Bannon, Tony Marks, and Andrew Medlar. We want to say thanks to the Green Space team. They produce this event, make it look fabulous. Jennifer, Ricardo, David, Utski, Veronica, and Emma. And finally, to the producers of Get Lit, that's Megan Ryan, Jordan Love, and Simon Close. Now to our June selection. Those of you who are big public radio fans probably are already familiar with this author. She's the creator and host of Death, Sex, and Money, the award-winning podcast, and she has a new book out called Let's Talk About Hard Things by Anna Sale. Anna has made a career of having difficult conversations, and in her new book, she explores her own story and the stories of others to investigate why diving into the most taboo topics is so important. New Yorkers, right now, head to wnyc.org/getlit to find out how to borrow your e-copy. Follow us on Instagram at allofitwnyc and on TikTok now at allofitwnyc. That's our Twitter handle as well. Now, mark your calendars for Wednesday, June 23rd at 7 p.m. That's when our next virtual Get Lit with All of It book club event will happen with Anna Sale. And we have a very exciting musical guest, Grammy-nominated singer-songwriter Mary Gauthier. Until then, happy reading, and we'll see you next time.